Let's put the next element up on the screen. Speaking of things Ryan loves, here's Laura Loomer. It's time for Republicans to start talking about Kamala Harris's sexual history and the reason why she likely doesn't have any children of her own. Oh, gosh. I'm willing to bet she's had so many abortions that she damaged her uterus. A woman who has no biological children of her own should not be allowed to make decisions in the White House for your children. So abortion point aside, that is why people who are very much a figment or are very much involved in online right-wing politics and are fluent in that language, which J.D. Vance is one of, it's why the online right likes J.D. Vance so much, that sort of meme of people who are childless shouldn't make decisions about the future of the country is why J.D. Vance felt comfortable saying that on Tucker Carlson a few years ago. It's something we've heard from Tucker Carlson, J.D. Vance personally. I detest that line of argument because it is so off-putting to people in those situations that you should be trying to persuade. I'm not a parent. I imagine that there is something that changes about your politics when you realize that there's a future for your own offspring that's on the line. The stakes are obviously higher, but it is Republicans, from my perspective at least, should be offering a positive message if they want people to vote Republican, if they want people to become Christian and conservative and share their views. The insults are just coming across as bitter and counterproductive. So the Laura Loomer line, I think it's interesting to see it from her because it seems like it trickles down then to more mainstream Republicans.
It's also not believable at all in the sense that a lot of Republicans, if she did have young children, would be saying, why aren't you at home taking care of your young children? Then she doesn't have children. It's like, why? How could you actually care about the future? You don't have children. So it's sort of like
the Phyllis Schlafly paradox.
I think you're just gonna come up with a reason that you don't want this woman to be president. Some people might be wondering why on earth put up something like as bonkers as that Laura Loomer post. She has 1.1 million followers
she has a lot of
on
followers.
Twitter, and she helps to kind of drive and craft a lot of kind of conservative narratives, and
I would say MAGA narratives.
Narratives, and this, I think there's an interesting kind of Elon Musk point to be made here. Loomer has been a notable member of the fringe for a very long time.
Yeah.
When Elon Musk took over Twitter, drove out all the progressives, for the most part, except me. I'm hanging out there. And then elevated the fringe to center stage on this massive platform where journalists are still hanging out and watching, even if they're not all participating. He took the freak show and made it the main event. And I think it actually hurts the Republican Party.
Yeah, it does.
Because all of us are then seeing like, oh, this is y'all?
It really hurt Democrats when Jack was in charge because that's the basis for the it's the basis for the J.D. Vance argument there. You had mainstream writers, journalists on the left who were making absurd arguments about why everything was racist.
And people even more fringe than that, whoever could say the craziest thing and say it in like academic language would then get 5 million views on Twitter that day.
Yeah.
And Democrats would be tearing their hair out being like, God, this does not represent the mainstream of our party. Twitter is not real life was the phrase that everybody would kind of throw at them.
Yeah.
And now he's done the reverse.
Well, I think we just landed on a really interesting point because you, despite our best efforts, because you started this by saying maybe America is just weird. Maybe America is just weird. And because Twitter and social media has gamified our politics, the fringe is obviously...
Or maybe we're just attracted to like engaging with weirdness.
Yeah, and who wouldn't be?
Even if
it's fascinating.
If that's not actually where we are, it's much more interesting.
And the politicians mistake that for affirmation or for some sign that an argument they want to make is going to be more potent or mainstream than it actually is, which our politics then are further distorted from reality.
And on Capitol Hill, you had a ton of Republican members of Congress repeating these talking points despite an effort by Mike Johnson and others to say, guys, stop talking about her race, stop calling her a DEI candidate, stop talking about her gender. So here's some of the efforts to use kind of normal talking points against her. Here's Manu over at CNN.
I don't think it matters who the Democrats run. Can't change the facts. Facts are, in 3.5 years, we went from a secure border to no border, and she's the border czar.
What's their biggest liability?
I think the border. I mean, I think it was their biggest liability to begin with, and she was tasked with fixing it, and that has not gone well.
Will she be tougher to beat?
She will not be tougher to beat. No, not at all. We're excited about Kamala being at the top of the ticket.
So I was listening to NPR on the way over here, and they were questioning Bob Casey about Kamala Harris on immigration, and he had a really hard time answering the question that even NPR was asking to defend her record, or whether that will be, I think the question is whether it would be a problem for her in Pennsylvania. Energy and immigration in Rust Belt states are a huge, huge vulnerability for Kamala Harris. There are a lot of old clips for her when she was trying to run to the left of a lot of people.
Ban fracking.
Yes.
Ban plastic straws.
If Republicans can make that argument, it will be devastating to her in Rust Belt states and could be devastating for them in the election. That said, those states also have big suburban populations that can be driven to vote on the weirdness. And if they're, running to out-weird each other, or to, let's say, how do you even say what they're going to be doing in terms of running away from the weirdness charge? They're trying to out-normal each other. Let's say that, unsuccessfully probably. In fact, let's actually put this is B4. We'll put B4 up on the screen. This is Newsmax openly advocating for Kamala Harris. Seems unfair to the Trump campaign, wrote Matt Bender. Supports massive corporate tax hike, wanted to cap rent and utility payments, backed tax-funded Medicare for All, investigated fossil fuel companies. Those were the Newsmax chyrons. Well, Kamala Harris spoke yesterday in Milwaukee. Now, B5 is a memo from the NRSC, the National Republican Senatorial Committee, that has this section on Kamala Harris. It's kind of like an oppo document where they're just listing some of the most potent lines of attack, what they believe to be the most potent lines of attack on Kamala Harris for Senate candidates, Republican Senate candidates. And under one section, it's just weird that Kamala Harris has a habit of laughing at inappropriate moments, going through some of the bullet points here. She's pledged to ban plastic straws, in favor of banning certain behaviors like eating red meat, loves Venn diagrams, loves electric school buses because she went to school on a school bus, recently discovered that electricity doesn't smell. So, Ryan, then you're going to be juxtaposing J.D. Vance, who has said whatever about cat ladies and Diet Mountain Dew, and Trump's weirdness, which is in another league and is actually much more funny than the weirdness of Kamala Harris or J.D. Vance, with the weirdness of Kamala Harris and perhaps whoever she picks as her vice presidential candidate. And that's what, voters are going to have to choose between, in addition to the broader issues like immigration and energy. Yeah,
your different versions of cringe. Yashar had... this is the one we just put up. It's like, those, you have two flavors of cringe.
Yes, two flavors
with these two. Meanwhile, Donald Trump. This is pretty funny. We can put up this next element, B6. Trump just cannot let go of Joe Biden, crooked Joe Biden.
Yeah.
And so
Trump
Biden has left the stage. So everything Trump has been truth socialing has been about Joe Biden and not about Kamala Harris. And Joe Biden is now leaving the stage with this crooked Joe Biden never landing.
I love that one in the bottom
it.
left.
Yeah.
It's like such a non sequitur. Biden never had COVID. He is a threat to democracy. Yeah.
He's just throwing stuff against the wall. No, this doesn't mean that he's afraid to run against Kamala Harris. But it means he's having a hard time processing the events, it seems like.
Yeah, well.
I mean, it's been a big week for him.
It's been a big month
Near-death
for
experience.
him. Yeah.
Plus then a convention, plus then losing his opponent and getting a new one. And his son talking him into choosing J.D. Vance, his son whose judgment he doesn't really respect and yet followed. You can just be certain that the fact that he listened to his son is gnawing at him as he kind of contemplates the J.D. Vance pick.
Well, again, I think what he valued in the J.D. Vance pick more than anything, we've talked a lot about J.D. Vance in this show, I just don't see any evidence. Like Harry Anton can put up that graphic that actually showed Vance's favorability still higher than Trump's. His net favorability is still higher than Trump's, which RCP at least has around like net -9, somewhere around there in their average. J.D. Vance could go down to like negative 20, and I don't think it would have a meaningful outcome or a meaningful effect on the outcome of the election, honestly. I just don't think people vote on vice presidents. All that is to say, it does affect the vibe. No question about it, it affects the vibe. So vibes are weird. The vibes are weird, and whether Republicans use Joe Biden as a line of attack on Kamala Harris, Donald Trump clearly is. There is something to be said on the cover-up angle. You said you gave good reason for why that might not work earlier in the show, but we'll see what Republicans end up sticking to.
Hey, if you liked that video, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to Breaking Points.
If you want to see the rest of Counterpoints, go to breakingpoints.com to become a premium member and get the full uncut show every morning in your inbox and on Spotify.